Spurs of Death by Natalie H. Woolley. The warden leaned back in his chair as he watched the door close, then turned to the man who stood looking out of the window. "Well, Jim?" he queried. The other came slowly back to the desk and reseated himself. His face was puzzled. "Who was that, Tom? He seemed strangely familiar, and yet I can't seem to place him." "That man was Cliff Williams, the cowboy murderer," said the warden. "You may have seen his picture in the papers. He gets the chair next month for the 3 murders he has committed." Jim Kelton registered surprise. "He doesn't look like the sort of person to do such a thing like that. He seems almost a kid." The warden smiled grimly. "His looks are deceiving. He has killed 3 men in the last 10 years, and as far as anyone knows, without any reason." "I'll tell you the story, if you care to hear it," the other assented. "Well, the first one was a cowhand down in Texas about 10 years ago. He was working on a ranch down there, and he and this fellow got in an argument over something. Shot him. Then he raked his face open with his spurs. That was the thing that trapped him in the end. Every time he killed, he marked his victim's face. Horrible, I grant you. Well, he disappeared, and finally, the case was forgotten. He was a kid of 19 or 20 then. 5 years later, he turned up in Oregon, worked on the Lazy T Ranch there. All the men liked him, too. He was quiet, knew his business, and never talked much. Then, one day, he came in from line camp, and the foreman gave him his pay. There seemed to be some mistake in it, and he went to the ranch house to see Danby, the owner. None of the boys noticed him come out, but when the cook went to call him to dinner, he found Danby dead. Choked to death, his face ripped open, and the cowboy gone. When they went to look for Williams, he was gone. When they next heard of him, the police got a call to investigate a brawl in a Laredo saloon. When they arrived and broke through the circle, they saw 2 men struggling. Suddenly, one fell, and then, before they could reach Williams, he lifted his spurred foot and slashed the face of the fallen man. Then they got him. Then the police started for him. They got him after a terrible fight. The other fellow died in the hospital shortly after. The warden shook his head. "He's a tough one. Never a muscle when they sentenced him." "Too bad." Jim Kelton rose and picked up his hat. "Well, guess I'd better run along. Come out for a game of bridge some night, Tom. Ellen was saying the other day that we never see you any more." The warden opened the door for his friend. "I'll be out some night soon," he promised, smiling. William stood waiting for the trustee to unlock the door of his cell. His eyes met those of Laurie, the man in the next cell. Between the two had grown up an active dislike, the more threatening because unspoken. At least, so far, it remained for Claflin across the way to bring the thing out into the open. They were all discussing an expected arrival. Said Claflin, "I guess this new bird is plenty tough. He murdered his wife and 2 kids. That's even worse than cowboy there." Laurie cut in sneeringly. "I don't agree with you. He didn't carve him up afterwards like Williams did. Nobody in their right mind could do a thing like that. I couldn't, and neither could any of the rest of you fellows," he charged. No one answered. The others knew of the enmity between the two, and a strained silence filled the place. Then, at last, Williams spoke, his voice hoarse, fairly quivering with rage. "All right, Laurie, you've said plenty. I'll remember it. And don't forget this. You'll be next. You'll be next," McKay repeated, harshly. McKay laughed, mockingly. The guard coming down the hall put a stop to further conversation for the time being. But now, the quarrel between the two was out in the open, and through the following days and weeks, Laurie seemed possessed of some imp of perversity, and taunted and jibed at Williams continuously. Much of the time, the cowboy murderer lay on his back on the cot and stared sullenly at the ceiling, only turning at times to throw Laurie a venomous glance. At times, Laurie grew ashamed for taunting a doomed man, but something inside of him, stronger than he, urged him on implacably. Once in a while, he shuddered at the looks given him by the other, and silently he blessed the bars that kept them apart. Then came Williams' last morning. The prison chaplain came to administer the last rites, but fled before the storm of curses that met him. After his departure, a long silence fell that lasted till they came for him. Even Laurie was silent and sat soberly watching as they brought him out, and he passed Laurie. He stopped and looked in. His eyes, filled with immeasurable hatred, met those of Laurie. On his face was a malignant sneer. "Remember, you're next," he said slowly, and passed on down the corridor. Laurie watched his retreating form till it passed from sight. Claflin called across in a hoarse whisper, "What do you make of his? Williams asked them to bury him with his spurs on." "Funny, isn't it?" Laurie did not answer for the reason that at the word spurs, a queerly premonitory chill passed over him. Uneasily, he recalled the other's parting word and the cold, evil hatred of the other's glance. He tried to shake off the cold, chilly feeling that was settling over him, but without success. There seemed to be an indefinable change in the atmosphere, a sense of something horrible about to happen. They all felt it, in a lesser degree. The gray day dragged along, and conversation lagged. By common consent, they all avoided glancing at the empty cell. It seemed too potent a reminder of the thing that waited for them all. Dusk settled down and shadows began to fill the corners. And then Laurie, glancing idly out the door of his cell, gave a startled cry. There in the shadows before his cell door, he saw something. A shadow that formed, that seemed to pause and linger before him. Then, as he cried out, it melted into nothing and was gone. His heart was beating fast, pounding with the nameless fear that held him in an ever-tightening grip. The sense of impending calamity drew closer. He began to shake. "What's wrong?" called Claflin, curiously, his voice low. Laurie's eyes, fastened on the empty cell next to him, did not answer. He could not. He was watching something that formed before his eyes into a man, a shadowy figure that smiled horribly and wore gleaming spurs. He saw it form, growing clearer and drawing nearer the bars. The shadowy eyes gazed back into his terrified ones, and then he screamed at the thing he read in them. A scream that died in his throat in a gurgle as he fell heavily. The guard came running. "What's going on here?" he demanded, angrily. He peered in suspiciously at the fallen figure. At last they entered the silent cell and raised him to his cot. He was dead. And across the horror that death had stamped indelibly on his face, there ran the livid gash of a spur.